Day tripping to a mountain a short drive from New York City in early December? Is that a crazy idea? Last weekend, we found out for ourselves. This past Sunday, we went to Hunter Mountain, which is about 2.5 hours from the city with no traffic. This was our first time visiting the East Coast for skiing since early 2020, and our first time at Hunter ever, as we look to expand our reviews into the Catskill Mountains. So was it worth it? Let's take a look. On the day of this recording, there were only 5 trails open. Pretty much all of them were top to bottom runs from this Catskill flyer lift. It was mainly intermediate and advanced terrain, but there was also a lower mountain green run serviced by a more beginner-oriented lift. We did all the runs in an hour and a half, so it was nowhere close to taking up our whole day. If you spend the whole day skiing on a day like today, you'll probably get bored. And Hunter's a pretty family-friendly mountain, so it doesn't really have an après vibe, at least this early in the season. The first thing you'll notice this early in the season is that the overwhelming majority of the mountain is just green. On the places that aren't open trails, it's straight up just grass. There's absolutely no accumulation. And when you go to a ski resort, part of the appeal might be seeing the winter environment and the snow all around, but on a day like today, it's still obviously fall. The entire mountain, besides the open trails, is just completely bare. It's kind of insane. The backdrop here is typical fall Catskills, so you have all of these trees that are still kind of in the late fall stage. The majority of them have lost all their leaves, but there are still a couple that have red leaves on them, and it makes for this tinted scenery that's very interesting. The other cool thing about Hunter in general is even though it's only a few hours from the city, it's not really just a small hill. Well, it's definitely minuscule compared to the destination resorts and even a number of Vermont mountains, but it still offers some pretty awesome views, which you might not expect if you've skied in places like Massachusetts, which just don't have as striking aesthetics as Hunter does. That was probably one of the most surprising parts about this trip for us. This day was actually pretty good for early December at Hunter. In a lot of seasons, you have even fewer trails open. You can get rain, which can ice over and turn into a sheet of ice for days on end. So we actually lucked out because we had some actual snowmaking powder. Now there's no mistaking there was some ice, and the shaded areas got skied off a little bit faster than the ones in the sun, but this is about as much as you can ask for at this time of year. There's not going to be real powder, like it's not going to be like Tahoe where a random 3-foot storm rolls in. It's not going to be like Colorado or Utah, which honestly haven't been great in early December recently either, although you're much less likely to get rain in those regions. So the Hunters of the world, they're going to have normal northeast fall weather, and maybe even on a normalish day at this time of year, the mountain could be rained out, frozen over, or even unable to open entirely. On every run you're on, especially this early in December, you're going to see these snow guns all along the trail. These snow guns are what allow Hunter to operate. If they weren't here, this trail would be entirely brown. But even during the core season, this is kind of how snow works in this region. There usually isn't enough natural snow to fully open the mountain, so it's artificially produced. So even during the core season, it's going to be pretty common to see a backdrop with white snowy trails, but not much in the trees or the surrounding area. That's why the overwhelming majority of trails at Hunter, maybe even all of them, have snowmaking guns on them. And the amount of time it takes for the trails to open doesn't necessarily depend on natural snow. Well, it depends somewhat on favorable weather, but it usually primarily depends on how fast they can get the snow guns working on every trail. And that's kind of how it is around the East Coast. It's not really until you get to Vermont that you have trails that reliably open without snowmaking, but here at Hunter, this is only about 100 miles north of New York City. It is not north and cold enough to get a natural snowy base that is practical to ski on. So if you're in New York, it's actually pretty uncommon to be able to ski in conditions this good in early December. It's not great, but for the time of season, at this low of a latitude and elevation, this is stellar. If you want just a normal ski vacation and you're looking to go to Hunter for that, you're probably going to be disappointed and you should probably wait at least a couple weeks. But if you want to go to Hunter in early December just as a day trip from New York City, and you just want to get some at least okay skiing in, because you haven't skied, if you're a normal person, for probably 8 months at least, then if you can go on a day like this, if you just want to scratch the itch, this isn't a bad way to go.